My name is Sarah Chingos, and I am an Associate Dean of Admissions here at Bowdoin College. Joining me tonight, albeit off screen for now, is my colleague, Senior Associate Dean of Admissions, Meg Brooks Swift. Meg and I are going to be working in tandem tonight. So while I am speaking, Meg will be available to respond to any questions that you would like to ask us using the Q&A function. So if something is confusing or doesn't make sense, or if I don't explain it very well, I apologize, but don't hesitate to put a question in the Q&A and one of us can respond. If there are some larger themes to the questions, we may keep those aside and bring them up at the end so that we have more time to discuss them. So please be patient and we will get to as many questions as we're able to. To get started, I'd like to give you an overview of what we plan to cover in the next little bit of time. What we hope to share with you tonight is a very broad overview of the college application process. This presentation is not Bowdoin specific, but rather an opportunity to give you a larger framework of understanding as you embark on this process with your student. This is also part one of a two-part fall series for senior parents and family members. The second event, titled From Your Den to Ours, will take place on Tuesday, October 21st at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and will focus specifically on student life at Bowdoin, and will include information on academic support, counseling, student activities, and more. We hope you will join us for that as well, and you can register at bowdoin.edu/admissions. So as the name of this event implies, we hope to meet you sort of where you are and where you may be in the application process, with the hope that this information will help you form the basis for navigating your students' unique application process. I will be introducing you to a number of different terms and phrases and will do my best to define them and explain them as I go along. I'm also going to be showing you some screenshots from the Common App that will help you see what your student will see if they choose to use the Common application. And just so you know, we also accept other application platforms, including the Coalition or SCORE application, as well as the QuestBridge application. But I'm going to focus on the Common App for the sake of efficiency this evening. Again, we encourage you to use the Q&A function to ask questions for clarifications along the way. This event is also being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent to you within a few days. I'm planning to talk for about 25 minutes or so, and then Meg is going to join me on screen, and we will use the remainder of our time together to answer as many additional questions as we are able. So first, we want to acknowledge that this can be a complicated and potentially stressful period for both parents and for students. It involves sort of this hearty stew of emotions and logistics, financial implications, and deadlines. Every student is going to handle it a little bit differently. So there's no set playbook for how it's going to go. This is a human, student-centered process, so we can't hand you a checklist or a roadmap that will lead to one desired outcome. Instead, we hope to arm you with knowledge about the process so that you can better understand and anticipate ways to support your student throughout the application process. While it may feel like admission to a particular school is actually the end goal, the journey altogether also really matters, and there may be any number of pathways or pivot points along the way to consider. Meg and I are saying this both as veteran admissions professionals, but also as the parents of a combined 4 college students or recent graduates. So we can tell you it's sometimes messy, but we also hope that it's sometimes fun and very affirming to you. So as I said, we have close to 500 families in the audience right now, and each of your student may be in a really different place in the search and application process. So this is a very general overview of this application process from now through next May. So from September through January, we'll be largely focused on designing a balanced and realistic college list, and then crafting the materials necessary to submit application components by their deadline dates. This will also include submitting required financial aid information. Many college admission decisions come out between February and April, and generally students need to make their college decisions by about May 1st. May through August then really kind of transitions to preparing for enrollment or matriculation at the college that your student has chosen. So we're going to start at the beginning and move forward. For those of you who might have joined us last spring for the junior parent programs, apologies that these first couple of slides may actually look a little bit familiar to you, but they hopefully are a good reminder as well. If your student is at the beginning stages of this process, the first step is going to be to develop a list of schools where your student might thrive. To identify these schools, your student may first need to actually do a little bit of introspection or looking inward. Students should be thinking broadly about what they want out of their college education. As a student, they might be thinking about what's important to them now and what will be important to them to experience as part of their college experience. What is it that they like about their high school? And what do they hope to find in college? What are they looking forward to? Some of your students are going to have really specific ideas about how to answer these questions, and many, many, many more are only going to have sort of vague ideas. And for some of you, you're going to be met with shoulder shrugs. That's okay. Regardless, both the specific and sort of the frustratingly vague will most likely change and evolve over the course of the next few months. So be open to this. Again, this is a journey that you're on. The important part is that your student is starting to ask the questions to establish a baseline from which they can launch. So this first step, making a list. There are a number of resources that can help you to approach this task. There are online resources such as College Board, the FISC Guide, or Naviance that provide actually a series of questions that might help your student identify schools that might appeal based on a specific interest. They might also be seeking out the advice and counsel of trusted adults around them, whether it is a school counselor, a family, or a community member, as well as students who have just recently completed this process and may now be in college. Every person that they talk to is going to know your student in a different context and be able to offer perspectives that may really help and guide and inform the formation of your student's current college list. So in addition to those resources, there are also some additional questions that might help your student really kind of hone in on a college list. What's important to your student academically? How do the academic offerings, whether it is a particular program, a major, approaches to learning, research opportunities, learning style, teaching style, et cetera, align with your students' interests now? And how might they be looking forward to what their career, long-term career goals may be? Is geography important? If so, is that geography related to location, like East Coast, international, South, or is it the type of community? Would they prefer to be in a rural, suburban, or urban environment? What about the size of the institution? Does weather matter to them? And what about distance from home? Are they willing to get on an airplane? How about campus culture and student life? Does it matter if there are opportunities for your student to be involved with athletics or the arts or service or other ways to engage with peers around them? Do they want a residential location or would they prefer to be able to commute from home? So, and then also looking at how does the school offer financial aid or scholarship support that works with your family's needs and your financial picture? Keep in mind, a young person's interests may change and may along the line. If your student plans to apply to schools through the Common Application, they may also choose to utilize the college search tool built right into their system. This will allow them to research schools, application requirements, and add schools to their list all from one source. Again, it's not the only source, but as you can see, right, as part of the Common App, it is a great way for a student to actually be able to do some research and start to investigate schools as they make their list. Once you've identified the student's priorities, it's important to really kind of think about selectivity. Selectivity refers to essentially to the acceptance rate of students to that college or university. As your student makes their list, they should seek to build a balance in the list that has different selectivity rates and admissions pathways. Their list should include some schools where they are really likely to be accepted or even guaranteed, depending on a particular state program, for example. There may be some in the middle ground, and then they may choose to apply to a few that might be a stretch as well. It is important to note that selectivity does not actually indicate anything in particular about a specific institution, just that it receives more applications in a year from students than it is able to admit and enroll in a particular class. Most colleges and universities in the United States admit most applicants. It's actually a very small number of highly selective schools that tend to grab headlines due to their low admission rates. There are thousands of colleges and universities across the country, so there is no one perfect school for your student. So while your students list may include a variety of selectivity levels, they should hopefully all be schools that your student really feels like they could see themselves thriving for the next 4 years. So I want to emphasize, highly selective schools are highly unlikely for almost any applicant, but there are lots and lots of options out there. Which is also a reminder that a college admissions decision is not in any way a reflection of an applicant's worth or something that's like a prize to be won. Admissions offices work to construct a class, and in their admissions decisions may reflect what that individual college is seeking in a specific context in a specific year. So similar to the months ahead slide that I showed you earlier, this slide provides a really general timeline to the various application rounds or cycles. Starting now, or very, very soon, schools that have rolling admissions, which means that they admit students throughout the course of the year, will have deadlines and may also start to issue admissions decisions. So in November, as we get closer, about a month and a half from now or so, 2 months, we approach the early application deadlines for a student that may choose to either apply early decision or early action. Early decision is a binding decision, which means that your student intends to matriculate at that school if they are admitted. If they apply early decision, they are admitted, they plan to go. Early action is a non-binding admissions decision, which means that the student may still choose to apply to other schools if they would like, but they have that admission in their back pocket. So January and February typically see regular decision deadlines, and schools generally begin releasing admissions decisions in March or April. May 1st is generally when most colleges and universities will require your student to confirm their enrollment at a school for the following year. This is also typically the time that schools may move to their waitlist if they're going to. Waitlist decisions may continue to roll out over the course of May and June, depending on the school and its enrollment needs. So these are hugely general timelines. And some schools or specific programs may have deadlines that are earlier, some may have ones that are later. So you have to be sure that your student is doing their homework and has some way to keep all of these deadlines organized in some capacity. It might be a spreadsheet, it might be a notebook, it might be a Notion, a calendar, whatever it is, but they really will need to have some way that they are staying on top of the deadlines and the specific specificities of their program to which they're applying. All right. So your student has a balanced list of schools and they know the application deadlines and other details. So it's kind of time to dig into the application itself. Again, they should do their research for each school, but here is sort of a general overview of what an application might actually include. There are a few systems or formats for compiling information and submitting applications, namely the Common Application, and then there's also the Coalition or SCORE application and the QuestBridge application. So there may also be some institutional or systemic application programs, such as like the University of California system. For each of these systems or platforms, your student can expect to be asked to complete some information, including basic biographical or demographic information, information on how they spend their time outside of the classroom, a personal essay, and information from others that will include things like a transcript, a school profile, and letters of recommendation. We thought it might be helpful to actually show you what your student may see as they start to fill in the various parts of an application. So for this program, as I mentioned before, I'm going to focus on the Common App, but you can safely assume that other applications are roughly similar, no matter which one you use. All right. So on the Common App, when your student logs in, they will see basic information dashboard, a tab that will list the colleges and universities that they have selected as the ones that they might want to apply to, the Common Application itself, which is highlighted here, and then the College Search tab that I referenced earlier for getting school-specific information, and a tab with detailed information about financial aid and scholarships. It's a very simple layout, but it encloses a ton of information. Once in the application tab, your student will see the various components mentioned before. So even if your student has not finalized their college list or they haven't completed their personal essay or whatever, they can still actually begin filling out some parts of the application. They can complete the various components whenever it really works best for them, but they do need to keep tabs on it. The profile and family sections will ask for basic biographical information about the student, their name, their contact information, if your student has siblings, etc. The education section collects information about your student's current or most recent school, the names of the courses they are taking this year or have taken most recently, any honors received, and if they have specific ideas about their future academic plans. The activities section provides space for your student to tell us about how they spend their time outside of the classroom. So I put this big red arrow here to point to the myriad options that students can consider when listing their activities. This is not at all limited to just school clubs, sports, or the arts, but also can include things like family responsibilities, volunteer or service work, jobs, internships, or other experiences that are meaningful to your student. You can help encourage your student to think really expansively in this space to help us understand how they engage outside of the classroom in all ways, including both formal and informal leadership. I also put a star next to the need help sidebar, which explains all of these things that I'm talking about right now to your student in real time. So they can use that, encourage them to use that need help sidebar. Again, your student can start filling out this information anytime. It's all open to them right now. They are able to do it whenever they have time to, even if they're a long way from hitting that submit button to in an application. So regardless of what application or platform your student intends to use, they're going to be asked to submit a piece of writing. If you're using the Common App, it will list the colleges to which your student intends to apply and what is required and the optional components are needed for each school's application. As a side note, Meg and I have noticed as we look at this that we want to note how incredibly different this is to the old handwritten or typewritten applications that we submitted so many years ago when we were going through this process. So it's very different. It's very streamlined. There's still a lot of information, but the Common App and other platforms have made it as simple to digest as possible. So on the essay, again, your student's going to be asked which essay prompt they have chosen to complete, and then they will be given the opportunity to either write it out or cut and paste it into their response. Time won't allow us to go more in depth on the essay and sort of what we look for in writing, but fear not. We are offering virtual sessions on application writing on September 24th and also on optional supplemental materials on October 9th. So your students should keep an eye on an inbox near them very, very soon. All the details will be coming out. And again, they can all register just by going to the admissions website. One component that your student will want to consider, you'll want to think about is testing and whether or not they're going to submit test scores as part of their application process. So when we talk about testing, we are generally referring to standardized testing, such as the SAT, the ACT, or AP test scores. Sometimes also international baccalaureate predicted scores, generally for international students. AP test scores also refer to the 1 to 5 scale score that is given for students who take the AP exam. So it's not their course grade that is submitted. So for the most part, colleges currently fall into one of three categories, and your student will be able to find testing information on every school's websites. Some schools are test required, which means that standardized testing is a required component of a completed application. Many schools that went test optional during the pandemic have now returned to required testing. Test optional means that it is up to your student to decide if they submit test scores to a particular school. If your student is applying to multiple test optional schools, they may also decide to submit scores to some schools, but not to others. This is a college specific decision that your student will be able to make if it's test optional. In some schools, such as the University of California system, are test free or test blind, meaning that they actually don't allow any applicant to submit testing scores. It's important for your student to know and to understand the approach of each school regarding test score admission submission. And it is fine for them to reach out to an admissions officer to better understand the philosophy regarding testing at that particular school to which they are applying. So Bowdoin, for example, is test optional. We are very test optional, but other schools may consider testing differently. And so you want to be sure that your student does the research as part of this application process. So here you can see what your student will see when they are asked about whether or not they want to submit their test scores and how to submit them. So speaking of additional materials, so in addition to the generally required application components that I mentioned before, many schools will also provide additional ways to help admissions officers know an applicant and their interest in a particular school. Some schools invite students to interview, either as a required or as an optional part of the application. There are many different formats and approaches to interviewing. They may be conducted by admission staff, such as myself or Meg. They might be done by alumni or by senior interviewers. They may take place before the student submits their application or after. They may be invite only. They may be in-person interviews, or they may be virtual. So lots of different options, and you should check the West Schools websites to find out. Some schools, such as Bowdoin, invite applicants to submit an additional short piece of writing that responds to a school-specific prompt. That prompt is often a space where your student is able to demonstrate their potential fit for that specific school. It's sort of like a, why Bowdoin, why X statement that allows a student to really express what it is about that particular school that excites them. Some schools will invite submission of an art supplement, portfolio, or a research paper. And some may also provide a video prompt that your student can respond to. Bowdoin does that as well. So while it may feel like there are a lot of hoops to jump through, in reality, each admissions office is seeking their own unique opportunities to get to know your student and to best understand sort of what makes them tick and how they might be a great contributor to our school community. All right. This is a dense slide, so I'm going to take my time trying to get through it, but and feel free to follow up with other questions if you have them. But I think it's important that we also talk about financial aid. So as you may have already heard, and you'll definitely hear again through the process, finding the right college fit means three things. It's finding the right academic fit, the right social fit, and the right financial fit. So, along with understanding how to assess what a college can offer your student academically and socially, it's also really important to consider how the financial pieces factor into this search. These terms can be kind of confusing, even to those of us who work with them every day. So, for now, I'm mostly just going to introduce them, and then future sessions will go into more depth on the specifics of financial aid. We are also offering a financial aid virtual information session on October 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So in talking about the cost of attendance, the COA, sometimes you hear it called, the cost of attendance is basically the sticker price to attend a school. It may appear at times, depending on the school you're looking at, it may appear overwhelmingly huge. But keep in mind that some of the most expensive schools, due to their generous financial aid resources and endowments, may also be some of the most affordable. So don't disclude a school because you see the cost of attendance that seems very high. There's need blind versus need aware admissions. Need blind, a school such as Bowdoin that is need blind, does not take into consideration a student's financial status when determining an admissions decision. A school that is need aware means that your household's ability to afford a college education may affect your student's admissions outcome. Colleges are open about being need aware versus need blind, so you should not hesitate to ask for this information about this at each school that your student may consider. There's need-based aid versus merit-based aid. So need-based aid, need-based aid is financial assistance based on a family's demonstrated ability to pay for college expenses. Merit aid, often called scholarships, is awarded to students based on some indicator, such as academic performance, musical talent, or other criteria. Some colleges or universities have separate scholarships that students can apply to, while some schools will automatically consider all students eligible for certain scholarships. There's loans and grants. So a loan is money that you borrow and are expected to repay. This money may be borrowed from the government, federal loans, or may come from private sources such as banks. Government loans may be subsidized, meaning that the government helps pay for some of the interest, or they may be unsubsidized, which means that you or your student starts paying the interest as soon as the loan is disbursed. A grant is money that never needs to be paid back. It is given to your student for their college education, free and clear. As your student researches schools, you should identify how schools package their loans and how they use grants and loans in their funding. All right, there's the CSS profile and FAFSA. FAFSA you may have heard of. CSS profile. These are documents that you may be asked to complete in order to determine financial aid, as well as eligibility for scholarships, grants, loans, and federal work study. CSS is produced by the College Board and is used by colleges and universities to award non-federal student aid. The FAFSA, which stands for Federal Application, see, I get confused, stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid, is used by institutions to determine both federal and non-federal aid to students. There are some snapshot resources. So every college and university that receives federal funds is required to have what's called a net price calculator on their website. So it's sometimes called My Intuition as well. You'll see it on either on websites that way. Completing this calculator will give you a really quick snapshot of what your family may be expected to contribute at a particular school. It is school specific. So every school's net price calculator will be on that school's webpage. Usually it just asks you a few questions, 5 or 6 questions to get a basic idea of affordability. Okay, it's a lot of information. There will be follow-up, as I mentioned, there will be follow-up sessions, and student aid offices are always willing to help you try to understand the financial implications and the best way to navigate the finding and determining the financial eligibility. All right. Keep in mind, these are some application tips. It is really important that your student knows that email still rules the day when it comes to college admissions. It may not anywhere else, but it does here. So you need to encourage your student to get in the habit of checking their email. So the email address that they plan to use for their college admissions applications and college admissions process, they need to check it frequently. So colleges may communicate about important matters such as missing materials or updates to a student's decision status via email. Typically, other family members are not going to receive any notice of these communications. And so it has to be your student's diligence. And it's really important that it's a great way for them to continue building these skills towards college. When they get to college, they're still going to need to rely on this. So please encourage them to check email regularly and to use that email carefully. You should know that every institution operates differently. Be it good or bad, every institution is going to operate in a different manner. And your students should be really careful to identify the dates, the requirements, and the opportunities for the places that they're and for the places where they plan to apply. For example, are there priority deadlines that they need to be aware of? Are there scholarship deadline dates? Are there rolling admissions? Is there an early action plan? So knowing all the different details will be really important to understand for each individual institution. The next one is important to know as well. Admissions people are here to help you. That is why Meg and I are here tonight. It's why our admissions office loves to be contacted with specific questions. We encourage your student to reach out to any one of us for assistance if they need help. School counselors at your high school are also great resources and may be able to answer specific questions. But if a student has a question and they aren't sure about the way to proceed on a particular college's application, they are welcome to contact the admissions officer for their territory or the admissions office in general, and we'll be sure to get an answer. I also want to mention that your student can make use of application fee waivers, depending on which college to which they are applying. So some colleges will automatically offer these to your student. Others make them available based on certain criteria, such as financial need and or if a student is first in their family to attend college. Your students should feel free to reach out to an admissions offices to make sure that they understand if fee waivers are available and if there's any specific application process for that. So with all of this information coming at your student and so many different things, both big picture as well as small detail to take into consideration for your family, it is easy for the college admissions process to really take an outsized place in the fabric of your family. So if you allow, Meg and I have added this slide here at the end with a few pieces of advice to consider coming from us as both parents of college students as well as admissions professionals. The search creates a really important space for honest conversations with your student about their academic, social, and financial fit and what that means in their college experience. Is everyone okay considering schools that are a plane ride away? Does your student understand the curricular and extracurricular choices that may or may not be available at different schools? What does affordability look like for your family? You may find that you are all aligned in your thoughts on this as you have conversations, or that there are opportunities to come together to learn and listen from each other. So, along those lines, really, we encourage you to try to schedule times for you and your student to discuss the college process and establish boundaries around where and where not these conversations take place. So I can speak for myself. As our children moved through this process, we worked really hard to keep the college search process away from the dinner table so that we were intentionally making time for other important aspects of our lives and not allowing the college process to seep into our family time together. You can determine your own priorities or how that looks. That's just one idea. And lastly, understand that the college search process really asks your student to engage in honest reflection while also putting their voice, their work, and their record on display for others to assess. This may elicit a full range of emotions over the course of the search process. So this is all normal, and we urge you to create space to meet your student where they are and to focus on the end goal of supporting your student as they move into this exciting new direction. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen and invite Meg to join me on screen. From here, we are going to tag team and try to answer as many questions as we are able to. So
Great. Well, thanks, Sarah. Hello, everyone. So glad we have such a big group tonight. I've seen a bunch of questions come through that are addressing a couple of things. So wanted to clarify, give a little bit more information about early decision versus early action, as well as test optional. So, early decision is a binding commitment. So, if you are applying early decision, you have decided that this is the school, or your student has decided this is a school where they want to matriculate. Ideally, you have used the net price calculator. Your student's application is as strong in November as it will be in January. If you are admitted, you are committed to matriculating the following August. However, it's worth us just saying that you can always back out of that commitment due to a difference in financial aid than you expected. So we do encourage you to use the net price calculator, but if finances are different than you anticipated when the actual award comes out, you can get out of that early decision round. The difference with early action is you can apply to as many early action schools as you would like. These typically have early deadlines. They may be as early as September for some of the rolling early action. If you are admitted, you are not bound to attend that school. So you are encouraged to apply to other schools' regular decision. You may end up matriculating at that early action institution, but you are not required to. So the main difference is the commitment versus the choice that you have. And it's just worth emphasizing that if finances are the reasons that you are held back, that is a time where you can have conversations with the Dean of Admissions and the Dean of Student Aid and be able to get out of that commitment. The other question that has come up multiple times is about test optional. And as Sarah mentioned, we are seeing colleges go all sorts of directions as it comes to testing, much driven by the change in practices during the pandemic. So this is a very important question for you to be asking every school to which your child is considering applying. It is a very fair question. You need to understand what test optional really means. And at Bowdoin, we say it is test optional, and we mean it is test optional. The class of 2028, as an example, had 54% of the class that did not submit scores. So if scores are in the application, we are going to consider them, whether that's AP testing, SATs, ACTs. However, if your student has decided not to submit tests, we have no way of knowing what they did. We have no extra information. We are just using what we have in the application. We are reading their essays. We are looking at their transcript. We are taking the words from their recommenders, whether that's their college counselor or their teachers, as a way of assessing their ability to handle the rigor of Bowdoin classes and be able to thrive in the classroom. So those were long-winded answers. I'll turn it back to Sarah, but just wanted to try to clarify some of that.
Great, thank you. There was a question I'm actually trying to go back and find. If a student enters a dual enrollment program at their high school where they are able to get high school and college credit, do all colleges or university accept the credits? I can only really speak to Bowdoin. I think that every school may have different priorities and different policies around it. So I am able to address it from Bowdoin's perspective, which is that a student who has been enrolled in a dual enrollment program and may have received some college credits or some AP credits as well. The answer is this incredibly frustrating, but sort of understandable. It depends. So for Bowdoin, it depends on, for example, an AP test score. So if a student has taken a particular AP exam and received a particular score, that score may be able to be used, or that credit may be able to be used in specific circumstances, in specific departments for specific reasons. There is a really complicated, if you want to dig into it on our registrar's homepage, you are able to find an Excel spreadsheet that actually goes into all the exceptions. You're able to find that, or you can let us know and I can send it to you. In general, at Bowdoin, a student who has received a 4 or a 5 on an AP exam may be able to actually have that usually used for placement. And so our students still need to take 32 credits. So essentially 4 courses in the fall, 4 courses in the spring over the course of 4 years. So 32 credits total in order to graduate. Those credits do need to come from Bowdoin or an otherwise approved program, usually over a study away. So those college credits that you may have accumulated during your high school experience may or may not generally count. And they oftentimes are used to place you in a higher level course. So for example, if you had a 4 or a 5 in a calculus exam and you wanted to jump into a higher level math, based on placement survey and test scores, you might be able to do so. So it really actually mostly allows you further access to higher level courses that you might be really excited to study in.
Okay, here is a question about, can colleges or universities see anything the student is working on prior to their hitting submit? I saw another question like this earlier. We do not see an application before it is submitted. We are not, someone also asked, if you call and ask about your test scores, have we noted them down? Are they recording them? We have so much to read and process that we are really not looking at an application until it comes into our database, into our platform. So you can rest assured that until you push submit, we know nothing about you.
Yeah. There's a question about, if applying early decision, when can a student expect a decision from Bowdoin? So we don't have specific dates necessarily. Our first application deadline date is November 15th, and generally students will hear about a month later. Our early decision two deadline is on January 5th. And again, students generally hear roughly a month later. And then for our regular decision deadline, which is also January 5th, students are apt to hear mid-March.
Here's a question about restrictive early action, and apologies that I didn't bring this up. Restrictive early action, in my understanding, is only used at specific schools, and it means that even though it's an early action school, meaning that if you get in, you can still apply and attend another school, you are restricted in applying to other schools in the early action round.
There's a question about, does Bowdoin require any supplemental essays as part of the application process? We do not require supplemental essays. We do offer two opportunities for students to submit two shorter pieces of writing. And so those are each 250 words. So there is an opportunity, but it is not a required component. And as part of our holistic review process, we will only consider the pieces of information or the materials that have been submitted by the student. So if a student only chooses to submit those that are required, we will assess it based on that. We will never hold it against them that they have not submitted anything else. So truly our optional components are just that, they are optional, but they are able to be submitted if a student is interested in submitting them.
So some more financial aid questions here. Should everyone complete the FAFSA and CSS profile, and what are the pros and cons of doing so? I think it is probably best to start with a net price calculator as getting a sense of whether your family will be eligible for aid. And if that indicates that you will, and that's completing, 10 to 12 questions, that will be a good indicator that it's worth your time to do FAFSA and the CSS profile. There is also a question about when you will get the precise cost of attendance for ED or EA. And that is something that most schools will not have the cost for the following year until the spring trustees meeting, which could be late April, early May. And so the best piece of information to use is the cost for the current academic year, understanding that typically there is a small additional, a 1 to 2 to 3% increase, but that will change. That is determined by the Board of Trustees later in the spring.
There's a question here about, how do admissions officers feel about parents contacting the office for things like test policy? And this is an understanding that the question is really lovely, actually, in that it is saying essentially that these students are busy, they're active, they're busy during work hours, and it's hard for a student to find the time to call an office in particular. So there's lots of different answers to this. However, what I would encourage a student to do, the first things are to look at the website. So if there's a question about test policy, is there information on the admissions webpage that will answer the question? If that is not there, the next thing I would generally recommend is that a student emails the office, and they can either find, and that can happen at any time. We don't mind 2 a.m. emails. It's okay. Although we hope your student's sleeping. But emailing us either their territory representative, which you can always find on the website, or just the general admissions inbox or email box. So for us, it's just admissions@bowdoin.edu. Any question can go there. We encourage students, and again, this is more sort of learning how to advocate for themselves through their process. And this is what they will need to do in college. This is a great place for them to start. If those are not able to happen, a parent contacting our office is understandable, and we will answer your questions, we promise.
A question about recommendation letters. Who are the best people to ask for letters? Should this only be guidance counselor or multiple teachers, extracurricular coaches too? So the college counselor has the opportunity to submit a letter. We understand that there are some districts where the ratio of students to college counselors is incredibly high, and your counselor may not know the student well. That is not going to be used against the student. We appreciate that this happens. Your student does have the opportunity to ask two other adults for letters of recommendations. At least one should be from an academic teacher. Ideally, this is someone who has taught them in 11th or 12th grade, but you also have the choice to have that second letter be from someone who knows the student in a different capacity. Maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a supervisor of a part-time job they've had throughout high school. Maybe it is the youth group leader of a religious group that they are part of. Anybody who can speak to who this person is as a community member, as a young person, as someone who interacts with others. We are eager to get different perspectives. And so we really like to leave this choice to the student in terms of who they think knows them the best.
There's a question, I've actually seen two questions that I'm going to try to lump together about listing activities on an application. So one of the questions was about sort of if your student has been really involved in a number of different things and that may potentially exceed the 10 activity limit on the common application, how do they go about or deciding either what to include in that list of 10 or how to make sure that we have an understanding as to the things in which the student has meaningfully engaged. The other question that I'm going to lump in with it is a question about submitting a resume. So, for a student is more than welcome to submit an additional piece of whether it's an email or an additional sheet of paper that can be scanned into the application or add in other places, either a resume or a full activities list if they exceed that 10 activity limit. They also can think about sort of, while they may have things that exceed the 10 activity limit, they may also have things in which they have been most meaningfully involved. And I'd encourage your student to kind of think through if it's a position in which they have taken on progressive leadership, or if it has been a meaningful research opportunity or a job shadowing opportunity that is meaningful to them or to their interests, then it's great to add, and we'd love to hear about it and know about it. If it is that they were involved in French club for fall semester of ninth grade and never did it again, that might be a choice, and they may decide that that doesn't actually need to be reflected in their resume. We're not looking for the quantity of things that the student has been involved with, although we know that a lot of our students are involved in a lot of different activities, and we're excited to learn about them. However, it might be that they might choose to go through their activities, prioritize a little bit, and choose the ones that are most meaningful for them and the ones that they think would be most exciting for us to learn about.
Here's a great question about not living near Maine. And so, how do you meet with an alumnus of Bowdoin in the area, or an undergraduate virtually, or a member of the admissions staff? So, I would encourage people to go to our website. We have an ability to meet our team, and you can check by your region. You can reach out directly to the admissions officer from your area. We also have, like this program tonight, a number of virtual events throughout the fall, including on Monday night, where we have a virtual chat with current students. So your student may be interested in hearing what it's like to be a current student at Bowdoin, and they could listen to that panel, ask specific questions like you all are doing tonight. We also do a bit of traveling throughout the fall. We have colleagues who are out on the road right now, and we will reach out to people in the areas where we are visiting, letting them know that we are visiting, whether that's at a larger group event or coming specifically to the high school. In some areas where we visit, we will conduct interviews. And so you have the chance to sign up for an interview, or some admissions officers might do drop-ins in a local space. But I think Ultimately, if your student has specific questions about Bowdoin, please encourage them to reach out to their area admissions officer. As Sarah mentioned earlier, we are always happy to answer questions, and whether that is over email or many times we can set up an additional Zoom conversation if they have many more specific questions. So we are all doing this because we love interacting with college, high school age students. So please feel free to encourage your students to go ahead and reach out.
There are some questions about the interview process, and so specifically at Bowdoin. So I thought I'd give a quick overview of that. You're talking to the two right people to talk to, and that Meg oversees all of our alumni interviewers, this incredible sort of small army of alumni volunteers who give their time to conduct interviews for students, and those are all virtual. And then in addition to that, I oversee our senior interviewers, which is a group of students in a senior leadership position who are trained and who conduct the bulk of our interviews, both on campus as well as a lot of virtual interviews as well over the course of the fall. So interviews are an optional component to the application and they are not required, but about 35% of our of our applicants do choose to do an interview. Interviews are offered now. They usually start in the summertime and they run through basically through our application, a regular decision application deadline. So students may sign up for it. We do encourage students who are considering doing an interview to sign up on the sooner side rather than the later side. And we do continue to open up additional interview slots on a weekly basis. So if you don't see something that works for you at the time, either an in-person on-campus interview or a virtual interview, either with an alum or with a staff member or a senior interviewer, check back in a week and there's apt to be more availability available. So what the interview actually looks like, no matter who you interview with, and it makes no difference who you actually interview with, but whoever it is that you do get a chance to interview with, it's a 30-minute conversation and it's meant to be just that. It is not meant to be something that a student should find stress over. It is something that is meant to be just an opportunity for us to get to know your student and to have a conversation with them about what they're excited about for college, the things that they're proud of in their high school experience, learn a little bit more about themselves, about their community, and also a chance for them to ask questions as they determine whether or not Bowdoin might be a place where they could see themselves thriving in their college years. So it's really meant to be a pretty low stakes conversation. The interviewer will write up a report following the interview, and it does become a part of the student's application file. But it really is meant to just be another way for us to have a chance to get to know your student and hear what they're excited about. I hope that answers some of the questions about the interviewing process.
There's a great question here about the arts. We do have 3 arts departments at Bowdoin where you can major or minor. There is music, there's theater and dance, there's visual arts. And we welcome students who are involved in these areas, whether you intend to study the arts academically or you intend to be involved extracurricularly, to go ahead and submit an arts supplement. I also would encourage folks, we just had a virtual program on the arts last week where there were faculty members from each of those 3 departments, and you can request a recording of that if you missed this event that I believe was last Thursday. So if you go to the virtual events section of our website, you can get more information about that. You are welcome to reach out to faculty members in the department, the arts department, as you would any faculty member, but also know that they are deep in the midst of teaching and may not have a quick response to you. And so we hope that some of the information on our website or through this recording that I mentioned might be helpful to you.
There's a question here about, can you share a little bit how a school profile factors into admissions decisions? So a school profile is something that is sent along from your school counselor, from your student school counselor, and it gives us information, sort of a little bit of a roadmap as to understand your student's school, high school. Some schools we're very familiar with, having covered various high schools for years and as part of our territories. Other schools may be new to us. What we oftentimes do is look to that school profile to best understand the context of the school community from which your student is applying. So a school profile is going to give us information that may tell us, for example, the size of the senior class. It may tell us what percentage of students from that senior class go on to four-year colleges and universities. It may tell us a little bit about some of the college matriculations that some of the students pursue. It may tell us what the curriculum looks like. So it oftentimes will tell us if there are AP courses available or an international baccalaureate program. It may tell us exactly what AP courses are available. If students are limited in the number of AP courses they can take, or if they can't take APs until their junior or senior year. It may tell us what the grading system looks like, if grading is very conservative or whether it is something that is graded on a curve. It will tell us whether GPAs that we see on a transcript are either weighted or unweighted. So it gives us a lot of information that is incredibly helpful for us, such that when we look at a student's transcript, we have context around it, which is critically important to understand what a student has had opportunity to engage in and what that engagement looks like. So what does rigor look like at the school so that we can then determine how a student has engaged in that rigor. So between the school profile and the letter of recommendation that oftentimes comes from the school counselor, those two things really help us sort of get a really good grounding in understanding the context of the community from which your student is applying.
Okay, there's a question here about geographic balancing of a class. And this is something that obviously is quite important to us. Bowdoin is a very diverse school, and we see the diversity in everything from the geographical makeup to the racial makeup to the political thought to activities that students have been involved in. Some of this information we see in the application, others we don't see, but students may write about it. And so we are really looking to bring class together where students will learn from one another as much as they will learn from their professors in the classroom. And so we see all sides of diversity as a very important part of our admissions process. And I would put geographic up there at the top.
So there's a question about, would you consider your admissions approach to be holistic or more focused on academics? The person who submitted this, thank you. You also said you saw our pie chart. So when you look in the admissions office and you come in, there's a poster, and the poster has a pie chart, and it says basically half, and it's like half head, half heart, essentially. So it's grades and academics, which do matter. We would never, ever want to set a student up for not being successful academically. And so academics do matter. We want to make sure that a student has the tools necessary from their high school foundational pieces in order to be successful in our classroom. But then the other half of it is also the heart. It is, who are they as a person? What do they hope to contribute to this community? How do they hope to be involved in it? What are the pieces that they will bring? Sort of, we talk about what their generous enthusiasms, what do they bring to it? So we do look at all of the pieces, whether they are required components of the application or whether they're optional pieces of the application. And we're looking for certain characteristics. Do we see evidence of intellectual curiosity? Do we see evidence of collaboration? Do they work well as a team member or in collaboration with other ideas? Do they embrace or they have a sense of awareness, both of themselves and others, and the way that their actions impact those around them? Do they have, is there evidence of kindness in their application? These are things that matter as part of our Bowdoin community and things that we really value as we look at not just the academics, but also the other pieces of an application. So Meg, we are almost up against time.
Ooh, look at that. Hadn't
I
even.
So there's one question. I will tell you, everyone, I apologize. We have gotten to as many questions as we can, but there are still 43 questions that are unanswered. So we apologize. We've talked as much at you as we are able to. If you have a question that has not been answered that is really pressing to you, we encourage you to send us an email at admissions@bowdoin.edu, and we will get back to you as soon as we are able to do so. So the last question, Meg, in 2 seconds or less, speed round. What is your favorite thing about Maine?
I had seen that question and I thought you might be throwing it at me. I love the community feel of Maine, of Bowdoin. It is a small town, small state, always opportunity to meet new people, but it's a wonderful place where people really know and care about one another. And I think there's a general sense of looking out for one's neighbors.
Yeah. I would have said the exact same thing. So it's been a wonderful community for us to live in, to work at. I've worked here for over 25 years at Bowdoin College. I love this place. And I'm really excited that this many of you have had a chance to spend some time with us tonight. We hope you can come visit us virtually or in person, and we look forward to welcoming you. We thank you so much on behalf of all of us in the admissions office at Bowdoin College for spending time with us today. We hope this has been helpful for you, and we look forward to having more communications in the future. Take care and have a good evening, everyone.